Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UENradio.com.
Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back. It's January 8th, so it's
You're
almost...
a perky little thing.
I am perky today. Thank you. It is almost too late to be saying Happy New Year, but I'm going to say it anyway because it is the first show of ours of 2018. We're very excited to be back here on the UBN network, our third, fourth home, and even more excited to see our friend Jarvis, our security blanket. Give yourself a round of applause.
Welcome back.
Welcome
Missed
back.
you.
Yeah, Tony's awesome.
In his own way.
Yeah, but he set me up a couple times, so I got to get even at some point. Maybe you can help me figure out how. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Wendy Rosenthal. I am sitting next to my esteemed partner and good friend.
What's her name?
I forget.
Eira Schwitzer.
Yeah, you say it. I was calling your son Switzer the other day. He was laughing at me. Anyway, we are so happy to be here on Distill It, a 360-degree view of life and sports. We have an amazing, wonderful show for you today because I get to introduce a dear friend of mine who is going to talk about a topic that is funny. I'm not sure it's the topic I thought we would start the year off with because there's so many good controversial things to talk about, but actually I'm really excited about this topic because I think sports, when you're thinking about sports for your kids and what they're going to do and how it's going to impact their life, you know, we focus so much on the big major sports, football, soccer, baseball, basketball. There's so many wonderful, fantastic, valuable sports out there. I'm going to call them alternative sports today just because it's an easy word to say. That many people don't even realize unless the Olympics are coming around and they see it in the Olympics.
Right.
And our guest today, we actually have two guests, one in studio and one on Zoom. But our guests today are going to talk about that in general, but also one of the more popular ones, I would say, even though you may not know it, and that's rowing. So we're excited to talk about that. But first, before we do, and before I introduce our guests, as always, we like to take a little bit of a moment to catch up, see what's been going on in the world of sports. And oh, my goodness, do Eira and I have a lot to talk about today.
It was a big weekend.
We had a big weekend. And it ties in with the topic, which is great, except for this, which doesn't tie in with the topic. And we have to give a shout out to the Alabama Crimson Tide for winning the national championship.
It was a wild ending. What a wild ending.
I got to tell you something.
I did not think that was going to happen.
That was a nail biter the whole way through, and gutsy move by Coach Saban.
Well, the second half was a nail biter. The first half we were a little,
but a gutsy
all
move.
Defense,
gutsy move by Nick Saban to pull his star quarterback and put in a young guy,
so worth it,
freshman. Changed the whole, dynamic of the game. Yeah. Anyway, for those of you who like college football, I'm sure you all enjoyed it. And I know that Jarvis is like, he's wearing his Alabama shirt. He's got it on. And now you're going to have to update it from 2015 to 2017 or 18, however they designate it. Yeah, so we had a couple of momentous occasions this weekend with
and
our
big
sons.
For you, because you were.
I am a sports mom virgin.
Yeah. What? You were?
Well, I was.
Yeah.
Well, I sort of I guess I'm not anymore because we had our first.
You've been broken in.
I was broken in hard.
Yeah, you were. Flag football.
Stuff was going on I didn't even understand until, I was highly educated by my friend Eira and the other parents around me and my own son. But we did two interesting things this weekend. Yeah. One was I had the opportunity to take our two 5-year-olds to the Rams game on Saturday night to watch what sadly was the end of their season.
Right.
But I got to tell you, it was amazing to see two 5-year-olds in a sea of very tall people.
Right. So focused and knowledgeable. I mean, they knew it was happening.
Well, sort of.
Yeah.
Your son had one moment.
I
got to share this story.
What did you do?
It was halftime, and Snoop Dogg was on the field. And we were all like,
He
doing
told me he
this.
felt Snoop Dogg had too much time on the field.
I'm sure he did, because halfway through Snoop Dogg's
Performance.
he said to me, Wendy, where did all the football players go?
I came to watch football.
I said, it's halftime. He goes, but why aren't they out on the field? And I was like, they're taking a rest.
Right.
They needed a break.
It's
They'll
Snoop's
be back
time.
soon. It's Snoop's time. But yeah, it was really interesting to see how even at 5 years old you can take in the enormity of a game and feel the energy.
Sure.
And even though the Rams lost, like the boys were
So excited.
on their feet the
Yeah.
whole game, and it was just really special.
Yeah.
And then we launched their flag football career on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a blog about it. Check it out tomorrow. It'll probably be up on all of our Facebook pages and our social media and our website. But it was a really interesting experience. And first of all, I totally didn't realize, what a novice I am. Like I walked
Right.
up, right, just like, oh yeah, I got this down. And
With this giant mouth guard that doesn't fit her son.
right.
She shows up at Target to buy whatever mouth guard she comes across.
Well, it was for his age group.
But not a moldable one.
It was not
Designed for his
Did
mouth.
you? I want to ask this out there of any parent. Do you know there's moldable mouth guards? Like I had no idea.
Yeah.
A parent who overheard me say, "My son's mouth guard seems like it doesn't fit." Said, "Did you get the one you can boil?" I'm like, boil? What do you mean boil? You boil a mouth guard? He's like, where did you get yours? I said, Target. And he looked at me like I
Yeah.
had just said I went to Mars and picked it up at
Exactly.
a gas station on Mars. He's
Right.
like, Target? Have you ever heard of Big Five? I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
But now you know.
But now I know.
Yep.
To the fact that I ordered my son a small jersey, and when he put it on, it actually came down below his knees, which makes flag football very difficult. To the fact the coach, I'm sorry, this is your one. The coach, who was a very lovely man,
He
who
was.
was late, and then had a son who was supposed to play, but
Yeah.
what happened?
Was very emotional. And so the coach shows up 20 minutes late, first of all, and then spends the next 15 minutes trying to encourage his kid to stop crying. And we're like, you know what? You're coach. So you know what? Your kid can't play. He's done. He's got to stay with mom. Let's move on, because there's a whole field of kids here ready to get going.
Oh, Eira, no, if she were that nice about it, you should have seen her. She was
I
pacing.
was nice.
You were very nice.
I was nice. I was just firm,
Behind his back, she wanted to kill him.
but I was firm.
She was very firm.
In a
Like,
nice
don't
way.
worry about your kid.
Yeah.
You're here to coach our kids. And
Yeah,
I'm sitting
move
there
on.
going, we're losing practice time.
Yeah.
There's the other teams. They're getting better than us already.
Exactly. But they
And
had fun.
They had fun.
And we
It
had
was
fun. That was
great.
very sweet.
And this is why we love sports. And I'll just say very quickly two more things. One, Eira and I are partners in an organization called the Distillery, and the purpose of our company is to work with athletes at every level to help them transition to their life after sports. And that's why we're passionate about sports, and that's why we're passionate about what we talk about. Everyone is an athlete, believe it or not. If you move, you have the potential to be an
So
athlete.
what Nike
right?
says, if you have a body, you are an athlete.
You're an
I
athlete.
agree, 100%.
Yes. So we talk on this show about a lot of things that don't have to do with what's happening on the field, because what's really interesting to us is all the little things around sports. So thank you again for joining us. And the last thing I'm going to say is today, as you might know if you watch our show, I wear a different hat every show, and I usually try and connect it with, our guests or our topic. And many times I succeed. Today, I got to be honest, this is a stretch. I'm going to tell you it anyway, but it's a stretch. So first of all, it matches my outfit. The shirt, the hat matches my outfit.
And it's
But
a great
besides
looking
that,
cap.
It is a good
Yeah,
cap.
I like it.
I actually got this at a golf tournament I played in recently. So it is a golf hat.
Right.
And golf is an alternative sport that people do play in college. And that is kind of the topic that we're going to discuss today. So I figured
It works.
It works. It's a stretch.
Good job.
Thank you. Every now and then I got to Betsy, sorry, I just saw Betsy made a comment. Oh, our friend Betsy who tunes in. Eira was firm, but oh boy, watch out, coach. Yeah, he doesn't know what's going to hit him. Okay, let's move on. I want to introduce our guests today. Jonathan Zilli is an entrepreneur extraordinaire. I've had the honor of working with Jonathan for many, many years, all over the world, as a matter of fact. I'll let him introduce himself more. But one of the reasons we wanted to have Jonathan on our show today is because he has a son that he has guided through his son's sports career since he was a child, who started out playing the sports like our kids, baseball, football, soccer, and all of that.
All the major sports.
All the major sports, and realized at some point it wasn't working for him, whether it was a joint decision, and I'll let him tell the story, but his son, he directed his son to rowing. And since that day, his son has really excelled and kind of taken off to the extent and passionate about the sport that he created or founded a rowing club called the 805 Rowing Club, which, and I'm going to again let you guys talk about what it does, but the passion that he brought to what he's doing and how he shifted from a kid that maybe wasn't so excited about sports into one that is so passionate that he started a club is what we're here to talk about in general today. How we can help ourselves and our kids find excitement in athletics, in lots of different places. We are also joined by Jake Court, who happens to be the coach of the 805 Rowing Club, and we wanted Jake to join us to kind of give his perspective as a very young man who has been rowing for quite some time, very successfully through college, and talk to him about his experience and how it jives with what kids are doing out there today. So welcome to you both. I'm going to start with Jonathan. Hi.
Hey.
Welcome to the show.
I love all the audience here. Hey, everybody.
Yeah. You like the big round of applause you
Yeah.
got? It's
awesome.
not enough for you,
It's awesome.
Jonathan. It's not enough. Thank you for joining us. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself before we launch into questions?
Sure, happy to. You describe me as an entrepreneur, and it's absolutely correct. And it's probably the one question our daughter hates being asked. She's a junior up at UC Berkeley, and people ask her, well, what does your dad do? And she says, oh, he's an entrepreneur. And what does that mean? She goes, you know what? I don't have the time of day.
He does so many
He's
things.
doing so many
Just
things.
stuff.
And I really blame Paramount Pictures, where I spent the bulk of my corporate career.
So you're right around the corner, actually, from
Correct.
from
I used to
there.
drive up and down the street,
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to the studio,
Here.
and that's where I met Mike,
Yep.
and then you at
Yep.
the same time.
Yep.
I ran the international licensing division there, and that's all about business development. And you're doing toy deals, fashion deals, publishing deals, theme park deals, restaurants like Bubba Gump Shrimp was something that myself and our team there created and had a lot of fun doing. And because of that, I decided to go off on my own and become an entrepreneur, so that I would actually have a ownership stake in everything that I was doing or involved with.
Sure.
So that's what I did a long time ago, back in 2001. Doesn't seem that long ago, though.
Yeah.
So
It was a long time ago,
Right.
though.
So I get involved in things that really pique my curiosity, and probably even more so today, getting involved in things that do good.
Yeah.
I think when you're younger, you're much more profit motivated, but these times it seems to be, for me personally, I get a lot of enjoyment out of getting involved in things that do good, and that's my life now.
Well, we like good. Tell us a little bit about Harrison and his journey.
Yeah, he's now 18, and fortunately, he was always interested in sports growing up, and he took an interest in baseball at a young age. He got a little bit of a late start. It's one of those sports that if you don't get started very young, you fall behind the learning curve and you fall behind everyone else. So he really got involved in it when he was like 10. And he was never the largest, most physically built or the fastest kid. Very much like me. My brother was the stud in high school. He peaked in high school. That's when I started, after high school started going. So that's kind of like Harrison. But he got involved in baseball, and he loved the sport. And, of course, as a parent, you just do all you can to support them. And through the years, we live out in Simi Valley. Baseball there is incredibly competitive
Right.
for kids. And Simi Youth Baseball is well known. A lot of current day major leaguers come out of Simi Youth Baseball.
Yeah, we had a guest on our show not too long ago that coaches, privately coaches kids and came actually out of the valley.
Yeah.
Probably coached some
Yeah.
of the kids in that area. He's now in near Atlanta. But yeah, it's a very, very competitive.
It is. And you get what I call man-childs at 12, 13 years
Yeah.
old, who are just physically a lot more developed than a lot of others. And so he went to a pretty competitive high school, both academically and also for athletics, Oaks Christian High School. And he tried his best, and throughout middle school, tried out every year for baseball, kept getting cut. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, kept trying. 9th grade, by the way, didn't make the 9th grade team. In my view, everybody makes the 9th grade
Right,
team.
exactly.
Everyone. It's like ASO soccer. Everybody gets a trophy. Why? Because you have this.
No, they don't. It is
and
not
they should
right.
not.
Well, that's the joke about ASO soccer.
Exactly. I know. I know it very well.
You get a trophy for showing up.
By
know
the
it
way,
very
I
well.
hate to interrupt this, but Eira was telling me as I'm standing on the sidelines on Sunday screaming at the kids, get him, get him. She's like, you can't do that in AYSO soccer.
Oh, yeah,
They
not allowed.
they
They
get
throw you
upset.
out.
If
Not
you-
allowed.
Oh yeah.
If you cheer, I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't want
My kids play away, so we have silent
I'm not
weekends.
doing that.
Right.
Where
I'm
you
not
can't
doing
even
that.
clap.
Right. So they banish you to the.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a lot of parents. So
Oh my God, I'd be banished because I would forget.
Yeah.
I just get excited. What can I tell you? Go ahead.
anyway, so his older sister was involved in club volleyball, club soccer. So we were already kind of well experienced in the club sports world. And when it was Harrison's turn, as he got older, he got taller and was more challenged to continue to do well in baseball. And his sister pretty much cast a long shadow in terms of her story and her journey.
Yeah.
So as he's entering his junior year as a parent, I said, what's the story you're going to tell whatever college you want to apply to and wherever you want to go? What is the Harrison Zilli story? And I said, if you put down varsity baseball, that's great. However, it really doesn't move the needle all that much because a million other boys are putting down
Right.
varsity baseball. So what is your story going to be that's different?
Yeah.
And he wanted to go to some pretty competitive colleges out there that require you to really stand out besides the grades. And he, fortunately, was a good student. So I rode 1 year in college. And as he got taller, I just looked at him and I said, you've got this rower's body. You're lanky and tall, and that helps. It's not a main criteria. And he said, yeah, I'd be interested in trying it. So we drove down to Marina Del Rey.
Right.
I found a high school rowing club down there called California Yacht Club, or CYC. Took him down for a Sunday recreational row, and he went out in a single. A single is a shell or a rowing boat that has 2 oars. So in rowing, you've got sculling and you have sweep. Sculling is using 2 oars. Sweep is using just 1.
Right.
Yeah.
And he got started in sculling at CYC. That first day, he was out in the water for a couple hours. But it was one of those rare days in L.A. when it was 115 everywhere.
Yes.
You know how the marina could be cooler? It was 115 out there. Sunday morning, blazing hot. And I can read Harrison so well. And he came off the water. He did not look happy. Beat red. And you get into one of those single shells when you're 6'2". So
Yeah.
it's very uncomfortable. So
Sure.
there's a lot of things that are making you feel uncomfortable besides the weather.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, so how'd it go? And he went, I don't know, Dad. And we had this long walk back to the car. And I was like, okay, fine. No problem. If not this, then what else can you think you'd be interested in?
Sure.
And he said, I'll give it another shot. And it was that second time he came off the water and he said, I get it. I love it.
That's great.
It's amazing.
And that's how he got his start.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I just want to remind everybody that you can call in. Our number is 323-284-7826. We'd love to hear your stories as well, or you can comment on our Facebook pages. I am checking, and thank you, Mike, for pointing out that Eira's name is misspelled.
That's appalling.
I can't pronounce it, and Jarvis can't spell it. Anyway, it's interesting. You raise a point that I want to
It's
bring up.
missing the R.
I want to raise a point
My
that,
last name.
that you brought up about, the fact is, what do you want to tell? What do you want your story to be? And I love that you said that, because a lot of
What
us
we
that
talk
we talk about
yeah.
is like, what is your story when you're, when we're working with athletes? We take a lot of the consulting best practice that we've learned over the years. Jonathan, I know you were right there alongside me when we were doing a lot of our consulting gigs, and we're, molding it to meet what an athlete needs. And one of the things that we do talk about is the story. And the reason I really keyed in onto it, because when you look at some of the facts, and I did a little bit of research, that story as you're going into any kind of college situation is so important. And the story gets a little bit better for you if you are not in one of the major sports.
Odds are much better.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of that.
And what's so interesting is the statistics are showing, like, if you're playing lacrosse in high school and you want to go to college, then you have like 12% chance of playing in college, whereas basketball or football or baseball, it's like 1% chance, right? And it even though the number of schools that play lacrosse at a competitive level is much smaller, and many fewer high schools actually or clubs at that age group exist,
Right.
you're still on such a, like so much more easily able to use that sport as a launching pad into college. Rowing is a very high percentage as well. I don't have it right in front of me. And then if you're a woman,
It's the
and lots of us-
highest. Yeah, oh, my goodness.
For women.
For women and for men.
Yeah.
It's really an extraordinary percentage that most people aren't aware of. And again, depending on where you want to go, for instance, UCLA, where Harrison is going right now,
Yeah.
UCLA this year for this upcoming freshman class had the highest number of applications of any university in the country, 136,000 applications. So how do you make your voice heard, assuming
Exactly.
that everybody's got great grades?
Exactly.
Okay. Once you get in, as I say, you want to go from the first stack to the second stack. And the way you go from there to there is they quickly look at your GPA and your test score, unfortunately. They don't read essays until you're in the second stack.
Yeah.
Now you're with equal GPAs, equal test scores. So your voice is going to be heard through your essays, but also it helps to have a coach, whether it's a golf coach, as you say, and kind of a non-traditional sport,
Right.
a rowing coach going into the admissions office and saying, hey, would you pay a little bit more attention to this applicant?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, not even like we're going to talk about this, not even on a scholarship basis, but just actually getting
Getting
to play,
in.
getting in and getting to play,
Getting to play.
getting
Yeah.
to actually.
But it
do
is
something.
important for families who really do look to, scholarships to be able to have any hope of sending their kids off to college.
well, I'm
move
gonna bring
beyond
that
the
up.
major sports.
I'm going to bring that up though,
Are
in
you?
a little, because it's not as bright as you might
Oh,
think.
it's not at all. But it's certainly your odds are better if
Your odds are
you
better.
move away from the major sports. Absolutely.
Yes, your odds are better, but the available money is
Yeah.
much less.
less.
So it's a kind of a trade-off.
Right.
Well, at this point, can we bring in Jake
Jake.
Court into the conversation, because he's young and he's kind of like gone through college, and now he's coaching. And Jake, I would love for you to say hello and just give us a little quick rundown about who you are and what you're doing right now. But then I do want you to pick up on this thread of, you made a choice. Also, you wrote in college, so maybe you can add a little bit to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started rowing back in high school, I was 15. So I was pretty young, but when I first went into high school, my initial goal was to go in the Navy, follow my grandfather's steps as a naval pilot. And so in order to do that, it looks much better on your college application if you have 3 years of sports. So I was given an entire summer to pick a sport that I was going to play. I was supposed to go out and find a baseball coach, find a football coach, and find a team that I was going to play for. Well, being a guy in high school, I wasn't going to take my summer looking for coaches. So a summer went by, and my mom, she rowed back in college, and she said, well, you're going to row.
And she picked rowing just because.
Well, she rowed back in high school. We had a couple of family friends that had picked up rowing as well. So she's like, this is something really cool. I think you should do this. Also, I don't want you getting hit in football, because I was a very tall, skinny kid. I would have gotten wrecked. So my personal safety was on her mind as well. But anyway, she came to the end of the summer and she woke me up and said, all right, let's go to the lake. We're going. And I was like, oh, shoot. End of the summer came a lot faster. No, I'm not going. I'm not going to wear tights. That's just not going to happen. And so,
Wait, here's a word of warning to parents. When you are actually talking to your kids about some of these alternative sports, make sure you understand what the gear is beforehand, so you
Yes.
can
Yeah.
you can have
Set
a
them up
response
well.
for all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, she said you were going to do rowing. So I Googled rowing and saw the outfits they had to wear. And I was like, nope. But anyway, she forced me up to the lake. And for the first couple of weeks, I absolutely hated it. But then it came time to really push myself in that aspect. And I'd played other sports before. I played the traditional, baseball, football, basketball. I sucked at basketball. Baseball, I wasn't bad at. Football, not too bad at all. But rowing had this aspect, when we sat down on the ergs, also known as rowing machines, it had this just unbelievable ability to just absolutely kick my butt. And that was something that it woke up this very competitive side of me, and I fell in love with it from there on out. So that's what I made my life about. So after that year, I started pushing. I wanted to go on I wanted to be on the men's national team. And next year got selected to selection, made it on the junior men's national team, raced in Bulgaria, which was amazing. And then the craziest part for me was when I first got my very first recruiting email, I thought it was going to be from some small school back east, but it was from MIT.
Wow.
Being like, hey, we're very interested. We want to talk to you. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. Because before I started rowing, my highest ambition was to go to Big Bear or Mammoth City College. That was actually it. That's as far
Great
as
options.
Wow.
Nothing wrong with those
So
places.
clearly you like to ski, right?
I
Okay.
love snowboarding at the time. I love the
Yes.
action sports. I love skiing. But when I went to a college fair, I was looking at all these boring options, and I saw a booth with some cute girls and a snowboard, and I was like, that looks great. I'll do that.
So great.
So,
To be 18 or 17 or 18, right?
yeah, well, yeah. So anyway, going into this, it opened up my eyes and it opened up my parents' eyes that this is an opportunity to really, make the most out of my education as well. It opened up doors that I would have not had available to me. So kept rowing, ended up going through a couple of recruiting processes with some pretty big name schools, some Ivy Leagues back east, Harvard, Yale, talking with coaches at Princeton, Brown, and then coaches on the West Coast as well at Harvard, at Cal and UW, and ended up choosing Cal. But it was amazing to actually have that pool of options available was pretty incredible. That was something amazing to go into. And, that's one thing that I think that, a lot of high school athletes look past now is the opportunity that these smaller sports give, as far as going into college and actually being competitive. Like, I would have, if I played football, for example, if I had that summer, I had found a football coach and I had started training with that team, I would have had to been like at the top, 2% of athletes
Right.
to even get considered to go to any of those schools. And, in order to get considered by those schools in rowing, you had to do what a majority of high school athletes are capable of doing. I focused up and I worked really, really hard, but any high school athlete,
Right.
if they wanted to work really hard and do it, it's actually something that's achievable. Whereas,
It's doable.
with football, it comes down to genetic freaks. We really focus on like, oh, this guy can do it. It's like, yeah, but he's 6'7" and can run a 4.3. Like, that's just not something that everybody can do. Whereas in rowing, golf, all these untraditional sports, so to speak, you have a much larger opportunity because it's one of those things where you are truly capable of achieving these numbers that it takes to get considered by colleges.
Yeah, I mean, it seems really obvious, but it's funny because it isn't, and parents focus so much on, the ones that they know, the ones that they love. Like it was funny. I was talking to one of the parents out on the field the other day, and he has his son playing rugby at 5, and I was like, I was really excited to hear that. I was like, I want to get David into rugby. Because it's one of those alternative. I personally like rugby, but it's an alternative sport that has an element of what it's like to play football, but actually, is probably one of those sports that is an entry sport into certain colleges. I want to say, first of all, thank you for those who've joined us recently. I see you, Peter and Julie, on Facebook. I really appreciate you viewing us. I wanted to just give a list of some of what is called the alternative sports real fast, just in case people don't know. Badminton, bowling. I had no idea that there are universities that have bowling teams.
Wichita State, national champions.
And you
that
can
right?
get incredible scholarships
Right.
through the National Bowling Association.
That's
So
so
it
great.
goes out of the college. That's what's so interesting. Track and field fencing, golf, gymnastics, handball,
Yeah.
field hockey, ice hockey, lacrosse, rifling, rowing, skiing, squash, swimming, obviously, synchronized swimming.
Right.
Tennis, believe it or not, is considered kind of an alternative sport.
Yeah.
Volleyball, water polo, wrestling, fencing,
Equestrian even.
equestrian, for some universities. Archery. There are schools that compete competitively in archery. Who was telling me? Oh, my husband's granddaughter is doing archery right now.
So
it's
great.
like, no, but it. So I think that it's really important to understand there are so many choices, and there's so many different things that can not only entice your kids but inspire them that
Right.
aren't just the big majors.
Well,
you
and
were
to
talking in the
Jonathan's
story.
point earlier about really being able to look at your kid and say, this is what he or she is built to do. Their design, their physical body is meant for, long and lean rowing might be a great opportunity. I mean, it's so easy for all of us to try and force our kids into something that just isn't really, designed for them.
Correct.
Where they can go off and do something differently and really shine in that regard. What were you going to say, Jake?
And one thing that I was gonna mention too is that you guys talk about life beyond sports, right?
Sure.
Sports, to me at least, and I think to all athletes, it's more about developing a well-rounded person and not just being really good at one thing. It's the lessons that you learn through practice and hard work. It's concepts that can be applied to all aspects of life. And when you look at the career length of NFL players or NBA players, where it's maybe 5 years at the most, they're not going to be able to practice those values throughout their entire life, only because those sports have a very real time limit as to how you can do it. Whereas all the other alternative sports, I think there's more opportunity to do it for all of your life, and therefore take all of the lessons that you learn through doing that competitive sport. You're able to stretch those lessons out over a longer period of time.
Jonathan, I want to ask you, so you look at rowing. You weren't in rowing yourself, correct?
Not
Before
currently, no.
No, before when you suggested to
He
Harrison?
had rowed.
I had rowed
right
in
high
college
school.
one
Yeah.
Oh,
year,
okay.
so
Sorry,
I was
I missed
familiar.
that.
I was familiar with the sport, but really didn't get involved in it beyond the 1 year in college. Moved on with my life.
And never looked back.
Never looked back.
So how, when you decided to, say to Harrison, okay, maybe try this, like as a parent, then what did you do? It's like, okay, I know how to look up a flag football league. It's not a hard thing. There's plenty of them around, how did you research? How did you know where to tell him what to do and how to kind of deal,
Well, fortunately, we live close to the water, all of us here in Southern California, so it wasn't too hard to find a high school rowing club. Where Jake started was up in Lake Casitas, which is kind of far from us. So I happened to find one in Marina Del Rey, and off we went. And that's how we found CYC, which turned out to be a really great place for him to learn because the coach is there. The head coach really believes in sculling, which gives you a foundation in rowing. You're not favoring one side or the other. And as an example of that, when we did go on a recruiting visit to UW, which is one of the top, if not the top, rowing school in the country, and speaking with the head coach there, Coach Callahan, he asked Harrison, so tell me about your rowing experience. He said, well, I've only been sculling for 9 months. And he said, I'd love to hear that from high school rowers because they have a great foundation when they come in here. Now, granted, it's highly, highly competitive there.
Yeah.
But that's what I did. I took them down, and as parents, that's what we do. We show our children a path and say, here, try this. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. But at least we try to open their eyes to things that they're not aware of.
Right.
And he was not
Give
aware
them
of it. His school
options.
doesn't have a rowing team. We live in an area where rowing is pretty unknown. Ventura County rowing is really not a known sport. You go to Newport Beach, Long Beach,
Sure.
San Diego, the Bay Area.
Yeah.
The rowing culture goes back over 100 years, and so they can recruit all day long. Whereas for us, we're very much an agriculture economy up in Ventura County with some pockets of wealth, but for the most part, a very Hispanic
Sure.
demographic there, and traditional sports, and so recruiting is even more of a challenge. But again, it goes back to why Harrison ended up starting this club, and it was his idea to do it because the distance became too far from our home in Simi to go down to Marina del Rey all the time. He came to me one day and said, "Dad, I want to start my own high school rowing club, but for all high school kids in the area, not just for my high school."
Yeah.
And I said, "Great. Well, I'm an entrepreneur, and you know my world. Treat it like a startup."
Right.
And I said, "Figure it out. Figure out how to make this happen, and hear the no, you can't do this over and over again, and try to get through those. And I'll help you, but if you're going to do it, do the heavy lifting, and I'll continue to provide you with that. Meanwhile, try to stay involved with rowing. Try to improve as a rower while you're getting this startup." And so
he did.
And he did. I asked him. I said, "So what are the critical things you need to get a high school rowing club together, Harrison?" He said, "Well, water. Need access to water." Okay, fine. Check that box. "I need equipment." Well, that costs money.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so determine how you're going to raise money to buy equipment, boats, and repair, accessories and things like that, oars. And he said, "I need a coach." And I said, "All right, giddy up.
Yeah.
Go figure it out." And I'll gloss over a lot of the hurdles that he overcame, and he managed to do all three. And we were maybe up and running for about a month. He recruited his coach from CYC to come up and coach, and we got started. He raised money to buy a used 8-man boat, and we were. I was spending a lot of time on the boat because we didn't have enough kids, and I rowed in college, so I knew what I was doing, kind of.
Right.
So there was a lot of great memories of being out there and getting.
Where did you row? What body of water?
He figured out to base the club at Channel Islands Harbor in Oxnard,
Oh, yeah.
and that's a harbor that's got actually
Okay.
a history in rowing, because that's where the '84 Olympics were up in Casitas, and a lot of the country teams would train down there.
Well, we have a caller. Hello. Hello. Are you there, caller? Oh, we lost you.
Color's gone.
Okay.
I did want Jake, though, to give us some information on 805 and what it's doing and
Yeah, for sure.
who that's available to.
Can I just talk a little bit about Jake? Just real
Yeah.
quickly, how we got to know Jake. So I get a call one day about a month into the club up and running, and he calls me out of the blue. And he said, "My mom is a volunteer at Oaks Christian High School, and she told me about the 805 Rowing Club. My name's Jake Ort. I rowed at Cal, and I was on the U.S. men's junior rowing team." He said, "Do you need any help with coaching?" I said, "Yeah, hired."
We don't pay much, but you're hired.
So I feel that we're very blessed to have someone like Jake as our coach now, because he's not just a great coach, he's a great mentor.
Yeah.
And there's a culture to every sport. We were talking about this a little while ago, Wendy. Every sport has its own culture.
Sure.
And rowing is very unique in my opinion. I'm a little biased, clearly, but it's a culture of respect and courtesy and hard work. It's interesting when all the rowers, they want to win when they compete against each other, whether it's an 8-man boat, a 4-man, a double or single. When they get to the start line, they all want to compete. But there's an acknowledgement and a recognition amongst themselves that each of them have worked extremely hard to get to that point. The community of rowers is unbelievable, unlike other traditional sports. And I've experienced the other traditional sports, and to me, rowing is really unique in that respect. So,
Well, that was one thing I just want to pick up on very quickly before you ask for Jake to talk, is that sadly some of the major sports there might be a culture of entitlement, of it happens in all sports, but we've even talked about it with other of our guests that sometimes coaches find kids that feel like just because they're 6'7" and weigh 250 pounds that they can do whatever they want. So alternative sports, the kind of the non-traditional sports are also a way to find a culture that maybe fits your kid better.
Correct.
Not just rowing,
Right.
but I think you bring a great point up, is that different sports have different culture, and that's something that you can also look to for your child or yourself, actually.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
true. And of course, with traditional sports, you've got professionals, and so there's an aspiration to make money. There's all the celebrity that comes with it. With rowing, there is no end game in terms of I'm going to get a pro contract. They all compete for a medal, just a simple medal. That's all. But really, it's more than that. You're competing for a lot of reasons, and it's just so fulfilling. And you see it in young rowers, and I'm now seeing it in our high school rowers that we have on board. And we've launched a girls team, and for girls, getting to that point, rowing can be an amazing vehicle to not only help get you into college, but help pay for it, because the percentages are extremely high in terms of the amount of scholarships, athletic scholarships that are awarded to rowers. And that includes coxes, by the way. That's the person, usually a lightweight, short person who steers the boat. They're basically the general. And unlike a lot of sports where the coach is right next to the players as they're involved in their sport or their game,
Right.
once the boat launches from the beach or from the dock, the coaches have to say goodbye.
behind, yep.
So the coach really becomes the cox becomes the coach. And so we're always on the lookout for
Short people.
short, very
Lightweight,
and
short,
and
lightweight.
and bossy,
Loudmouth, exactly.
who don't mind. You know what?
Eira would work, except she's kind of tall.
I'm tall.
But bossy?
And for them, speaking as a general statement, they don't have really kind of traditional sports they can get involved with because size matters.
Right.
Absolutely.
Here's a case where size matters to the
The
other
advantage.
in the other direction.
Yeah.
Okay, I keep cutting Eira off, so I want to give her.
No, but
your-
please, I wanted just to have Jake give us some more information on 805 because I know that it's got so many different people there: men, women, boys, girls, young, older. And so, can you talk to us a bit about what the options are there and how you're working with the rowers at 805?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to treat everybody as their own individual, and we definitely take each rower on a case-by-case basis, and we try to develop them according to what they'll need. And I think overall it makes for a stronger team. We build up, in rowing team boats, but we really do try to build up each individual as much as possible so that all in all, it makes for a really strong unit. And we take anybody and everybody. We don't want to be, picky with who comes our way. If I was going into rowing again, I probably wouldn't have gotten too many looks from coaches. So I was really grateful for the opportunity that coaches gave me. I'm 6'3", but when I was first starting rowing, I was actually pretty small. So coaches were really gracious in giving me that opportunity. I try to, pass that on as far as giving everybody an opportunity to show what they're made of. And in the end, it comes down to mental toughness. It comes down to who's able to show up every single day and put the work in. And that's where it counts, is just putting the work in on a day-to-day basis in practice.
But it is a sport, I have to say, it's characterized as a suffer sport, and with good reason, because it does challenge you both physically but also mentally.
Absolutely.
Unlike, I think, most sports don't challenge you as much as rowing. So we try to qualify people as much as possible in terms of, are you involved in sports already? Are you athletic already? That helps because, again, it will challenge you.
Right.
And what's the most challenging mental aspect, do you think, to rowing?
Well, I'll give my opinion, but Jake can also proffer up his. I think the most challenging thing mentally about the sport is where your brain is saying to you, I don't have anything left in the gas tank. And you have to mentally say, no, I'll use a SEAL term, a SEAL training term, which is no, I'm only at 40%. That's really hard to do at any age, but particularly as a teenager. You have to find a way to get to a place that you thought was impossible to get to because your body is saying, no, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
And you will be surprised at how these young men and women manage to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary to watch it.
Well, that's one of the reasons we love talking about sports, is because it is a metaphor for life. And even in life, if you're not even talking about a physical act like, rowing or any other athletic endeavor, how often do our minds tell us we can't do it, and we're only at 40%? So that's why we love talking about sports, because it really does shape the world. I mean, it's a reflection of the world.
Right. But that gift is translatable.
Totally.
Moves beyond the athletic endeavor.
Exactly, which is
amazing.
why we love sports, because you can take everything that you have learned in sports and translate that to anything, and it gives you a huge advantage. I want to talk about a couple of things because, as always, we're running out of time very quickly. A couple of things that I found really interesting. One is that there's a lot of talk nowadays, even more so than I think in the past, about yourself or your kids being multidisciplined in different sports. And one of the things that I found to be very interesting is, if your kid loves football or baseball or basketball, great, that's fine. But to maybe engage them in one of these less traditional alternative sports as well, because they should be playing more than one sport anyway. Right. I think that there are so many studies now that are showing the best athletes, the ones that make it to the professional level, have like 90% of them played more than one sport at the same time. So I find these sports like a really fantastic way of almost kind of doubling down, like covering your odds. So yeah, you may love football, but there might be a point along the way where you're not going to be able to play it. But if you've been playing field hockey, or you've been rowing, or you've been golfing, or whatever along the way, at some point you could branch off. So I thought, that was an interesting point that you guys kind of talked about a little bit. And also I did want to talk about the scholarship thing, because parents nowadays are looking for ways not to pressure their kids, but ways for their kids to get into universities and not have to be at the highest level. I read a private university right now, you can on average rely on spending $50,000 a year. State universities, you're around $25,000. So, it's expensive. The good news is you're right. For these sports, and the research that I did shows that there are many more scholarships that can be had in these alternative sports. It's the downside is that most of these sports don't offer full scholarship, and many times they divide up. Coaches have to divide up an amount of scholarships. So, for example, in fencing, they might have 8 full scholarships, but they have they want to have a team of 12 people. Right. So now you're taking 8 full and dividing it up and getting partials. Right. Did you have that experience with Harrison? I know you mentioned a little bit about it, and I know you were saying that UCLA doesn't really have that.
Yeah, because of Title IX, what happened with UCLA, which used to be they had men's varsity rowing, now you have women's varsity in the men's club. And so rowing for Harrison, although he got recruited because he was really honestly the only high school kid in the United States that started his own rowing club, and that got the attention of a lot of, he was not necessarily the fastest rower out there, but doing something like that really set him apart. Sure. And he ended up getting recruited by a number of colleges. However, he chose UCLA for a couple of reasons. One, the academics, first and foremost. And secondly, they have a relatively new coach there who wants to rebuild the men's rowing program back to kind of the heyday in the 60s and 70s when they proudly were beating Cal and UW. Yeah. And so he was like, well, I did a startup in high school. I may as well keep going with this whole startup thing, and I really buy into this coach's philosophy about rebuilding the program on excellence. And the coach is from New Zealand, which has a rich tradition in rowing. So he knew he'd grow as a rower. Yeah. However, we got zero money for rowing at UCLA. And that's perfectly fine. He used rowing in order to help him gain admission to a highly competitive college, whereas women potentially have the same opportunity, but also to earn scholarships to pay for their tuition at UCLA. So that depends on the college, Yeah.
Well, it's, you bring a great point up. Another bit of information that I discovered is that colleges have a lot more money in academic scholarships than they do in sports scholarships. Right. But if you're coming to the table and you're at a decent or, above average academic level, right? So you're ticking boxes anyway. If you are somebody who is at a level of being able to participate in one of these alternative sports, colleges are actually more likely to give you a scholarship because they can kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Right.
They have the high or the good enough level of academics, but they can fill a spot, and they don't have to take that scholarship money away from their coach. Right. They can support it with academics. So a lot of times coaches of those sports will go to bat for you in the admissions process
exactly
to get the academic scholarship. So it's another benefit of making sure that your kid has, is not just focused maybe on one of the major
area.
sports, because you can use that to your advantage. And another thing I wanted to say, because I've noticed we have a few friends of ours from the UK watching. Another thing that's very interesting is that when you play one of those alternative sports from a foreign perspective, colleges take a lot of foreign students and bring them over on scholarship because of that.
Speaking of that, if anyone's heard of the book Boys in the Boat, seemingly a lot of people have read that. It's a great story about the U.S. team from UW. Back in the day, the national college champion was the Olympic selection, so the whole boat would go, which makes sense, right? Because they've been rowing together.
Right.
And that year, UW upset all the heavyweight favorites to win the collegiate championship, which they then qualified for the 36 Olympics in Berlin, where the Germans were heavily favored. And of course, Hitler was very proud. This was a sport back in the day where it drew 200,000 spectators.
Sure.
And these boys from UW were basically loggers' sons, poor families coming out of the Depression, beat the Germans. So it's a wonderful story. The joke today, however, about UW is it's called the European Boys in the Boat, and Jake can attest to this, because there's only one American, maybe two, in that entire varsity program. They're bringing in athletes from Serbia and Croatia to fill these seats and win.
Yeah.
No, it's look, again, we get to the end of the show and I'm like, God, there's so many more things I wanted to ask you about. Jake, can I ask you for any final thoughts on, advice or your experience or anything you want to say to the viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the main thing is just explore other options, ask around, see what kind of opportunities are around this school that you're at, especially in high school, and don't shoot too hard for those football and basketball and baseball slots. If there's plenty of potential to be really, really good at something else. Yeah, it may not get that spotlight, but at the same time, the opportunity in that sport could be immensely greater than if you just were to pursue the traditional sports that we have here in the United States that are kind of powerhouses. The traditional sports are great, but at the same time, these alternative sports, they give you an opportunity to explore a different world, to find other cultures around different sports, like you were saying earlier. And who knows, by looking around, you might just find something that fits you far better than football, baseball, or basketball ever could. And you might be stuck in something that you can do for the rest of your life. So,
I love it.
Just explore your options, just see what you can, find out, and maybe start signing up for more clubs come club sign up day at your high school.
That's great. Jonathan, any last bits of advice?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Jake. At least knowing that there are other options. I know that in the high school level, at the high school age, everything is about image at the school, and all the jocks, the football, basketball, baseball players all have that great kind of image and persona. Yeah. But you can stand out as well, whether it's rowing, archery, or any other sport that could be more to your liking.
I love it. All very well said. I agree with all of them.
Anything else you want to say before we go?
I love this notion of just think outside of the box.
Think outside the box.
I love it.
We try to do that here all the time.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody who tuned in today from all over the world. Thank you for sharing this 50 minutes with us. We are back next week. I know it's unusual. It's usually every 2 weeks, but because of the holiday schedule, we get to see you again next week, where we have invited back our dear friend, Jaron Wright, who's going to come back to continue our amazing conversations. Jaron is a former University of Texas football player. Maybe we can talk to him about this a little bit. Yep. And we always love having him in studio. So have a wonderful week. Stay dry. Drive safe if you're in the Los Angeles area. For you, of those who are in London, it's always raining, so this is nothing new for us. We don't know how to drive in rain. Yeah. And have a fantastic week. Thank you very much.
See you next week.
See you next week.
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune at ubnradio.com.